So, who has the first question?
Hello. So you said about the effects of lack of sleep, and one of them was some of the things that are fairly dramatic, like cancer and that. But some of the other ones, how much of them are reversible? So we go through a period where we're not getting enough sleep, and then we get to a period where we can sleep. How much goes back?
I mean, we haven't done the studies. I mean, these are associations. So I'm aware. Can you hear me? Well, the question was, I showed you lots of hazards of not having enough sleep over months and years, diabetes, hypertension, depression, that sort of thing. The question was, will reversing lack of sleep reverse the associations? And we have to say there's no evidence that's the case. Well, having said that, treating depression now in Australia in particular, they focus on sleep, and just treating the sleep and depression does seem to reverse depression. So I'd say there's a sporting chance that these things can be reversed. We haven't got the evidence, but there's no harm in trying. I mean, diabetes probably, you're not going to cure diabetes by forcing someone, because by the time it's up and running, the damage has been done probably. But things like blood pressure to some extent, certainly if you treat someone with bad sleep apnea, with one of these masks, that their blood pressure is usually improved, and occasionally we can stop medication. Depression, I think that is a real big chance to improve depression. Cancer, once the cancer is up and running, then I don't think sleep's going to be a massive factor in reducing that. But yeah, so it's a long-term study needed, or studies needed. But watch this space, I guess.
Thanks. Lady first.
Hiya. I'm clutching at straws a little bit, but my mother-in-law suffers, and you did mention restless leg, so I don't know how much you know about it, but she has very little sleep at night. It's really bad. It's affected her whole quality of life. She gets up at sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning. She is on medication for it. It hasn't been very successful, and I wondered, is there anywhere you would direct anybody with it, or any recommendations?
Yeah, sure. I mean, say the usual problem is it's not actually diagnosed or recognised or misdiagnosed, and GPs will often give a medication to improve sleep, and that actually makes it worse rather than better. So I'm pleased that she's actually been given a diagnosis. There are lots of different treatments for it, different sorts of treatment, and depending whether it's the sensory problem or whether it's the motor restlessness that's the key thing, we might tailor the medication. A key thing is iron, and if she hasn't had her iron levels checked, they definitely need checking, because replacing iron can be a magic wand in some people. But if she's only tried one medication and it sounds like it's really severe, she needs to see someone that that can advise further, basically.
Right.
She's locally in Newcastle, is she?
She's in Selby.
Oh, Selby, York. Okay, well,
Yeah.
you're a black hole for sleep medicine. They do sleep apnea quite well in York, but other sleep problems, a lot come up to me actually. So,
Right.
I mean, if you're prepared to travel to the borough, just get her GP to refer her to my sleep clinic, and we'll do our best to sort her out.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Pass it to Tony, please.
Yes.
Hello, can I squeeze in 2 quick ones? You talked about 7 hours for most people.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of evidence where it sits?
Yeah, there's no doubt that there are long sleepers and short sleepers within the spectrum of these things. I'd say 90% of us, 7 hours is the norm. Einstein had 10 hours, interesting to know that. The notorious short sleepers through our history are Napoleon, Edison, Thatcher, Trump. They're not great adverts for lack of sleep. But there's no. You do see people that say, "Oh, I'm absolutely fine on 5 hours, 6 hours." But these are pretty exceptional people actually. And then when you look at them and actually analyse their brain function, they're not doing quite as well as they think. And as a corollary on that, people that do shift work are the real issue, because shift work you can manage on a wing and a prayer in the 20s, 30s, but we see people that work at Nissan do these horrendous rotating night shifts, and they come with all kinds of neurological problems, migraine, even epilepsy, and it's because they're not coping with their shift work. So in your 40s, certainly 50s, your brain does not deal with shift work at all well. You don't get the rebound sleep in the day, so you're effectively chronically badly sleep deprived, and it fuels, in my view, everything else. So yeah, so 7 hours is the kind of the mantra, but yeah, there are a few people that maybe 6, maybe a bit less, and some people do need 9 hours. Now there's a condition out there that's got a fancy name, idiopathic hypersomnolence, where people require 11 hours sleep in a 24-hour period, and this is rare, but it's out there. So these are exceptionally long sleepers, and even with an 11-hour sleep period, they're still having sleeps in the day. So they're a rare bunch, and that's a card-carrying sleep disorder. And between them and normal people, there are long sleepers, certainly, yeah. But they're quite rare, actually.
Well then, I'll come to you next.
Just to ask, is your 7 hours or even 5 hours, does it have to be continuous, or is that cumulative throughout the night?
That's a very good question, actually. There's a current theory that's going around now for a few years, based on the idea that humans naturally, maybe, are designed to have 2 sleeps a night. And this is based on diary analysis, like Samuel Pepys, the great diarist in the 1600s. Back then, it was very common for medieval people to go to bed at dusk, just candlelight, and then they'd get up about midnight, 1 o'clock, have 3 hours maybe, or 2 hours of doing stuff, writing diaries, doing whatever, then get back for a second sleep. So this idea is out there that maybe we are wired up to have two sleeps. Actually, that's probably rubbish. It's just a kind of a thing that was fashionable in medieval UK, because certainly cavemen don't do that, or didn't do that, we're pretty sure, we think, and primitive societies don't have that pattern. So bottom line, is it okay to have sleep through the day? You're sort of asking the question, are naps kind of able to restore you? Is that?
I didn't actually mean naps as such, though that would be relevant, I suppose. But if one sort of sleeps for an hour and a half, a couple of hours, wakes up, boils, sleeps, whatever, back to sleep again.
Ideally not, because say a surrogate marker or a kind of a rough marker of sleep quality is that deep stuff, and you don't tend to get that if you have fragmented sleep. And just another complete night to move aside here, people fashionably now have these little Fitbit watches that reportedly measure their sleep. They're rubbish, by the way. They give you very inaccurate data. So don't believe your Fitbit. So it's a hard question to answer, to be honest, because it depends what sort of sleep you're getting. Again, it all comes down to quality. So the bottom line, if you're having fragmented sleep, but you're feeling okay in the morning and not having naps, if you can watch films, you can be a passenger for an hour without falling asleep. If you're not having brain fog, if you can multitask, if you can do texting without being clumsy, you're probably okay. And if you can't do that, probably you are a bit sleep deprived, and you think about trying to get more continuous sleep. But natural aging, we will be fragmented with our sleep, and it's just a natural part of growing up, I'm afraid.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, okay. I'm going to throw a few things at you, I suppose.
Please have one question, please.
Oh, well, since 3 o'clock we get sleepy, maybe we ought to be changing how we structure society. Maybe this whole issue of sleep ought to be given greater status, and shift workers who pay such a toll. I mean, why do we have to be making cars through the night? I can see where hospitals need staff, but there's so many jobs. And it seems criminal. It seems wrong.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same hemisphere there. Just on one interesting idea that's come out of the ether in the last 10 years or so is this idea of the timing of important things for the day. And education is one good example. So I mentioned how the average 16-year-old naturally will want to go to bed beyond midnight and get up at 10 o'clock. The average middle-aged teacher will be different from that. So there's been a great movement. In fact, one of the first schools to do this was in North Tyneside. It must be 10 years ago now, where they changed all the lessons, all the important lessons, the math and the English, etc., were in the afternoon, when the students were in theory were more alert at the peak of their powers, where the teachers were suffering. But they claim to get good results with this, and this has been repeated in the United States and the US. And this idea that you should cater for a teenager's natural sleep cycle and allow them to come in at 10 o'clock. And have the meaty lessons in the afternoon. It's quite a fashionable idea, and I think it's one definitely worth exploring. Yeah, and working through the night, it's torture. It is a form of torture, and unfortunately, it's age-related. I said, I mean, when I was at the shifts I did as junior doctor in the 80s, 90s, I dream of doing that now. It's just inhumane, and you just don't cope with it beyond a certain age.
Remember, one of the things from the Blue Planet is that dolphins and whales apparently sleep half their brain at the time, so they can breathe.
They've evolved clearly to do that. Yes.
I was wondering if there's any connection when you said that some of the parasomnic people we are actually sleeping 1/3 of their brain or something. I was wondering if there's any connection at all.
The parasomnic story is a bit different. That's again the frontal lobes that are still asleep, and so it's not a side thing. It's a front to back thing, if anything. So yes, it's a different sort of partial sleep. But yes, it's fascinating that the work of dolphins do that. If you see them in that state, they do actually tend to go in circles, apparently. But also birds are interesting. I mean, they don't admit how they did this, but they looked at see the birds that like an albatross that spends like literally days on the wing, and birds have evolved to wing it rather than hunt. So they don't really sleep, but they are real exceptions. I mean, especially to me, that every animal so far studied has an absolute need for sleep. Bees, for example, insects, primitive animals you might say, but bees have sleep periods, and when a bee's in a REM sleep, its antennae apparently just droop. You can spot a dreaming bee, apparently.
Question here.
Thank you. It's absolutely fascinating talk, but what I want to know is what you do about it.
I guess I'm always very aware that if you bang on about sleeping so important, then you create a certain amount of anxiety that fuels insomnia. And one of the big philosophies really behind insomnia is, there are very few people really treating pure insomnia in the country. Lots of theories, but very few actually treating it properly. So one of the big players is a guy called Colin Espy. He's a professor now down in Oxford. And his great idea, it's a very simple idea, is that it's about effort. So the more you try and sleep, the less likely you are to sleep, because you're rousing yourself to sleep. The best way to sleep, if you ask a good sleeper how do you sleep, will give you a funny look, it's automatic, it's a natural process, you don't think about it, it just happens. So his thrust is that cognitive behaviour therapy, CBT, that's used for anxiety, for smoking cessation, is a perfect treatment for insomnia when it's geared towards insomnia. And it basically takes the effort out of sleeping. So my simple way of looking at this is that it doesn't teach you to be a great sleeper, but it teaches you not to be worried about being a rubbish sleeper. So you're not trying to sleep. You kind of bore yourself to sleep. You distract yourself a bit. You maybe even deprive yourself, so you go to sleep very quickly, and then you get used to sleeping. And then also one of the bits they do is they get you to lie there and accept the feeling of drowsiness. It's not a nasty feeling, it's just being drowsy and not to be aroused by that. Thinking, I must sleep. So the question was, what do we do about it? Yeah. Well, if it's pure insomnia, it's over-arousal, then you say there are behavioural techniques, relaxation therapy, sleep hygiene is the word that's used to avoid coffee, avoid exercise, do all the right things. But card carrying bad insomnia, it's an issue. It's out there. It's badly treated in the NHS. It's a real black hole within sleep medicine, unfortunately. So my job is really to find things that are actively fueling insomnia. So things you can reverse, maybe with drugs, possibly, or with other techniques like master snoring. But treating pure insomnia, if you're worried about your sleep and you can't sleep because you're overwired, it's a tricky one actually. So despite all I've said, don't worry too much about it and don't try and sleep. It will be the kind of simplistic, flippant way of No, again, hypnotics, there's a big culture now against hypnotics in GP land and elsewhere, which is partly justifiable. I think people got over the top with it. The trouble with hypnotics, one of the problems is that they don't really give you good sleep. I mean, so people do not feel refreshed after alcohol, after Valium. Very few drugs out there will actually make you feel better. And there are a few actually, and most of these drugs enhance that deep sleep that I was on about so much. So there's one drug in particular, if you give it to normal people, they get feeling more refreshed. Very few drugs do that. So hypnotics aren't usually the answer for people that have primary insomnia. They can help and they can be a kind of rescue therapy, but it's not a long-term answer. Mostly because you get used to them and they don't actually give you very good sleep. You can actually measure it. So drugs, people are moving away from it. People have moved too far maybe, and drugs like melatonin, which are really hormones rather than drugs, are perfectly simple, easy. They're quite mild sorts of drugs, melatonin drugs, but I think they're underused actually, and you can buy them over the counter in most countries, not the UK, but you can't go far wrong with melatonin if people want a pill to help sleep. rather than a kind of a Valium time drug.
Kate's going to ask a question in a second, but before that, I just thought I'd ask a question myself. Purely in the interest of science, I have been studying alcohol effects on sleep for quite some time. And
That's called a double-blind sample.
And my conclusions are that the more you drink in the evening, the quicker you go to sleep, but you wake up potentially in the middle of the night. And I understand, and I've taken note of the fact that it depends on what you drink, and if you drink things like whiskey or brandy, they've got chemicals in which can affect the brain again in the middle of the night. Whether that's the total effect, I don't know. But I mean, is it a fact?
It's one of those areas where it's say what I do, not what I do. To do what I say, not what I do. Sorry. Alcohol and sleep it's tricky. I mean, overall, alcohol is bad for sleep. Although, having said that, a late whiskey can help sleep onset in some people and not be too toxic overall. But alcohol does other things. It increases snoring. It increases bladder issues. So generally, alcohol fuels lots of other things. I showed you a sleepwalker or sleepwalkers there. Alcohol's quite a potent cause of sleepwalking in some people. It's probably not the alcohol per se, or it's probably the secondary effects of alcohol that trigger off unwanted events during the night, and that can really cause problems because I've been to court on a few occasions trying to defend people who do things in their sleep. I've had a few drinks before sleep, and people say, "Oh, this alcohol-induced behaviour." Well, it's clearly not, but convincing people that can be quite tricky. So that's one area of alcohol. But overall, alcohol's taken chronically. The studies show that it just isn't good for your sleep. The odd nightcap, that's not an issue, but it's a very good REM sleep suppressor. Now here's the thing: people that I'm sure you're not in this category, but people that go on binge drinking, say for weeks on end, who are really card-carrying binge alcoholics. You'll be familiar with the DTs. People see pink elephants and all this sort of thing. Now the DTs are interesting. Actually, this has been studied. Now, alcohol is a very potent REM sleep suppressor. So you abolish dreams if you have significant alcohol before sleep. Now the brain, I don't know why, but the brain has to have REM sleep. So if you suppress REM sleep for a week, 2 weeks, then when you stop the suppressor, alcohol in this case, your brain will have lots of REM. It will kind of rebound REM, as it's called. And this manifests in daytime stuff. So dreams, or the visual part of dreams, will leak into wakefulness, and that's what the pink elephants are. They're bits of dreams. The brain has to have dream sleep, so it comes out as hallucinations in the day. So DTs are caused by lack of sleep.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm quite addicted to reading in bed. It's me. Sorry. I'm just wondering if there's any sort of patterns about the effects of reading in bed.
I mean, we often encourage people who have insomnia to read something, maybe non-exciting. I mean, I don't have a problem with getting to sleep, but I do crosswords a bit, and occasionally I can last 10 minutes, occasionally a bit longer. But no, there's nothing to put you off doing that. We say do something that's kind of non-exciting. I mean, the thing not to do is to do work and emails before bed. I've seen nothing wrong with reading before bed. Great.
You've obviously been really clear about the fact that having deep sleep matters. Should we be aiming to increase the amount of deep sleep we have per night? And are there any ways of doing that apart from the obvious things like exercise, eating a healthy diet, avoiding alcohol? But is there anything that perhaps people aren't aware of?
Well, I think the tip is to recognise things that ruin your night's sleep. We mentioned snoring, we mentioned restless legs, etc. And drugs too are a big cause of lack of deep sleep. No, I don't think there's any. I mean, there are drugs out there that will do it, but you don't want to take drugs just to enhance your sleep depth. So I'm not sure I have got a tip really, other to avoid things that make it worse. Thing not to do. I mean, increasingly we're seeing people in clinic coming with their Fitbit readouts and saying, "Look, I'm not getting enough deep, slow wave sleep. I'm not getting REM sleep."
That's why I'm asking.
I really would ignore the details of those things. I mean, I reckon they're quite good for monitoring sleep. So say you have a sleep pattern that picks up and whatever it is, and you do something, whether it's exercise or change your diet, they might be quite good at picking up a change in your sleep quality. But don't believe what they say, because they'll give you readouts like my fancy graph at the start that are hitting the grams. Absolutely, I mean, there's no way they can do. We have, I mean, I showed you that hypnogram that showed you cycling through REM and non-REM sleep. Now that they take one person about 3 hours, well 2 hours anyway, to go through. You can't do that by machine. Despite all the kit we have, that a person has to stage sleep. And to think that a wristwatch that's measuring pulse rate and movement can stay absolute nonsense. It's a rough surrogate measure of wake and sleep, but don't believe the detail. But having said that, it might be good to look at your change. If you have a kind of if you do something, you might say, oh, well, let's change. But don't worry about it.
What's the difference with exercise? I think, there's been a bit more deep sleep on the night following.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably quite good for that. But don't worry about it. So we see people come in anxious because they think they're not getting proper sleep.
Just interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just wondering when you said regarding sleepwalking, is there anything you can do, or is there any cure for it?
It's tricky. I mean, there's no evidence. It's one of the areas of medicine that hasn't been researched properly, so there's no drug trials. I mean, we do use drugs sometimes. And I was thinking the other day, what's the rationale? What's the science behind choosing a drug to treat sleepwalking? And it came to me in a flash of inspiration. The perfect drug for sleepwalking is a drug that will convert a 10-year-old's brain, from a sleeping perspective, to a, say, 40-year-old's brain, a fit 40-year-old. So you want to age the brain a bit. If anything, you want to suppress the deep good stuff a little bit, but not so much to make it bad, because these events come out of deep sleep. So drugs that slightly age your brain a bit might be the perfect drug. And in fact, the drugs we use in clinic are drugs that might actually do that. But if drugs aren't the way forward, and they're not. And if you are going to use a drug for sleepwalking, we tend to say just reserve it for when you're having a bad spell, not every night for months and months, but just a week at a time, maybe every now and then. But as I mentioned, there are triggers. I mean, and most severe sleepwalkers are aware there are certain triggers, whether it be stress or lack of sleep or shift work or something else. So those are things we try and reverse, and the sleep deprivation being the key one. So people have busy lives and shift work, etc. Those are potentially reversible things that we can address. But it's a tricky area. I mean, there are drugs I know we use. The evidence is pretty patchy, but sleepwalkers are quite a difficult bunch to treat, actually. Apart from the dangerous things that happen with violence, people always worry they're going to walk out of hotel windows and what have you. But in reality, it's pretty rare. Probably the worst thing I saw was a guy in his 30s who was still sleepwalking pretty regularly. He was a bit stressed out, sleep deprived, was feeling it, and he used to go to the kitchen. Occasionally would eat, not always, but just wander to the kitchen and wander back. On one occasion, he went to the kitchen and opened the hamster cage of this new hamster. Went back to bed. Hamster got out. Cat dispatched it. Child found it in the morning, decapitated. Mega domestic stress. So that was an unfortunate event. And that's why he came to clinic to get his sleep sorted out. But in reality, it's quite. People often worry. One thing I would say, if you are a sleepwalker, never have a child in the bed with you, because in this state of semi-consciousness, things happen. You can. The part of the brain that recognises people is still asleep when you're sleepwalking. So, So basically, do not have babies, young kids next to you if you're a sleepwalker. That's as important as wearing pyjamas in hotels.
This is a bit off the wall, but why do we wake up?
Whoa, why do we wake up? Because our sleep drive is dissipated. So it's like, why do we stop eating? Good question. What actually makes us wake up? Yeah, I mean, it's...
Well, why do we wake up?
Well, there's a hormonal thing to it. I mean, I mentioned the clock. The melatonin is secreted by the brain about 2 hours before we sleep. So melatonin is a dusk detector in a sense, or dusk makes you release melatonin in your brain, so it can prepare the brain for sleep. And this cycles, via our clock mechanism. So the levels of melatonin start to drift off at about 4 o'clock, so that sleep propensity dissipates. And you recharge your sleep drive. Now, we don't understand what the sleep drive actually is. We can't really measure it. There's a chemical that people talk about that may be a measure of sleep drive, and that gets that goes through the night. So when they're reached a certain amount, then we're not sleepy, so they feel awake. But yeah, but it's a good question. What actually makes us wake up? I mean, don't know. Sorry, it's one of those unanswered questions. One of the many.
We'll try another one.
I've heard that using a computer screen just before you go to bed is a really bad idea.
Yeah,
is that the case?
Yeah, a bit overplayed maybe, but certainly. About the clock. I mentioned how light entrains our clocks to 24 hours. So there's a really important connection between the retina in the eye and the part of the brain called the hypothalamus, where all the sleep is orchestrated. So light is a very potent influence on the clock mechanism. So the light bulb, courtesy of Swan or Edison, is the biggest sleep toxin out there. I mean, we've totally changed our sleep patterns, and people study people without electricity, without light bulbs, and completely different sleep patterns they have. They don't actually sleep much longer, but they sleep much better than ours. So anything that gives you a bit of light late in the evening, even if it's just from a computer screen, the blue light in particular can delay your clocks. It can show without doubt. So yeah, so some people do go for kind of non-blue light devices. I think it's a bit overplayed how bad that is, but it's certainly a factor. And it's amazing. I mean, back of the eye, you have all these pigments that kind of make us see. But pigment was discovered about 20 years ago now. It's the pigment that detects light, the light detector, and this controls our clock. It's called melanopsin. And certainly blue light will activate this. So ideally avoid light exposure, blue light in particular at night. But any light in the evening, and that's a way to get over jet lag, is to avoid light at the times when you want to be asleep. Light's a very, very important thing. Our brains collect light and a major influence on our clock mechanism.
What about sheep? Do you think counting them has any benefit?
Apparently, if you go the, that's so boring. That's better than counting sheep.
Phil?
I hope this doesn't sound like a funny question, but is Donald Trump suffering from sleep deprivation, and does it affect his daytime decision making?
There's a simple answer to that. Absolutely yes. It's in my brain. What's really interesting is that people have analysed his tweets from the middle of the night, and the ones that are totally outrageous and off the wall and bad spelling and completely sort of out there tend to be 3-4 in the morning. I've no doubt that his mentality and his whole psychology is strongly linked to lack of sleep. Yeah. I mean, he fits the bill. Impulsive, perseverative, mean-spirited, lack of humour. He fits the profile of a sleep-deprived person beautifully. No frontal lobes.
Does meditation, things like meditation and sex, do they help?
Leading question. Yes, yeah. I mean, okay, poorly studied scientifically, but absolutely, yes. Certainly, people have insomnia. Meditation, not about sex, but meditation is certainly one of the key things. To mindfulness, relaxation therapy, to de-arouse the brain. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You mentioned about light, and obviously there's a great variation in the amount of natural light, length of day. Is there any variation between people who, say, live on the equator and people who, Eskimos?
That's a good question. I mean, it's been poorly studied, actually. I mean, there's quite a good sleep research scene in Sweden and Norway, and they looked at this area. And basically people are completely different people. Well, they're completely different in many measures, summer compared to winter. So it's a hard question to answer. Here's the thing that might interest you. In the UK, when the clocks go forward and we lose an hour, there's always a blip on the Monday, heart attacks, accidents, and there's a reverse blip when we clocks go back and we gain an hour. So you can spot physical health just by an hour's shift. So I don't know answer your question, but yeah, I mean, people do differ, and it's probably studied. I mean, their brains have evolved presumably in populations to adapt to the seasonal variations, but they all sleep loads much longer in winter, much less in the summer. But I guess they've evolved to do that.
Okay, I'm sure you made a mistake before when you described Pepys as a medieval man. He was actually 17th century, but another thing from the early modern period, I was.
So when does medieval? Is that Tudors? So when
well, Tudors are, the very early modern period, aren't they? It's the.
So what age? What year would
well, though there's no fixed year, and there's as many controversies, but he's certainly early modern period is Samuel Pepys and not medieval. That's okay. I was. I visited in the Czech Republic, the Karlstein Castle. Now, the King of Bohemia, right, had a very short bed, and we thought, well, they explained it wasn't because he was a short guy, he was actually a reasonably tall guy, but they had shorter beds because they used to sleep sitting up, because they believed that, like, Nick could come and get you in the middle of the night and you'd be more likely to die. Now, the reason I'm asking that is how much research has been done into, like, the changing theories of what makes good sleep and what makes bad sleep and what's influenced it.
It's been shown in the study, actually, the angle of the sleep position. And even a slight angle is actually bad for sleep, and that's why flat beds in first class planes are so much better than a reclining seat. You can show that if someone's at this sort of angle, their sleep quality, they may sleep quantity normally, but the quality, the deep stuff, is affected by angle of sleep. So it's not good to sleep at that sort of posture.
This was actually in a they slept
in a sitting
position, these kings.
Yes, which is bizarre why that should have happened. But a lot of these practices, like bloodletting and stuff, went on for hundreds of years. So you think it must have had some sort of benefit, you'd think, but no, sleeping upright is definitely not good when it's been looked at scientifically. Out of interest, was that the castle in Prague?
Karlstein, it's outside. It was a fortress, so the people couldn't get the king.
Okay,
he lived well away from it,
Yeah, because I was in Prague quite recently. I went to the castle. I was trying to find. My little passion is my sporting passion is real tennis, medieval tennis. There's a court in Jesmond, but apparently there's a court in the castle in Prague. Although it's hidden away now. I never found it, but that was my rationale for going to Prague.
Any more questions?
What's medieval tennis?
Real tennis. Yes.
No, but pillow not completely flat. It's more the body angle. So you're allowed to have your head tilted.
Any more questions for Paul? Jim's got another one back there, and there's one here. We'll ask this lady first.
I'm just going to ask a correlation.
Can you use that, please?
Oh, sorry. Any correlation with sleep and different foods? Any quality of sleep?
Yes, again, poorly studied scientifically. I was on holiday actually 10 years ago now, and we met a guy who's in our little village who was a Brit who had a holiday home there called Stephen Gates. Now he's gone off me a bit now, but he was really quite high profile about 10 years ago. He's kind of a food scientist type guy, and he got really excited about, we had chats about how different foods can maybe influence your sleep quality, right? It's sort of been proven that cheese does give you dreams. There's a chemical in cheese called 5-HT that does influence dream sleep, as we've shown. So I do believe the theory that blue cheese can fragment your sleep. I mentioned before that you only have dreams if you wake up in the middle of a REM period. So fragmenting your sleep gives you more dreams. So this chemical probably does that. So blue cheese and dreams, I believe. Carbohydrates make you generally sleepy. So people that have narcolepsy, like the woman that fell over, who's a bit sleepy, but usually much more sleepy than her, we say avoid carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, because this post-prandial, post-meal sleep really gets there. So kind of a surge of carbohydrate will make you sleep with an average, and rather than go for high protein diets, not good people. But beyond that, it's a little bit shaky, to be honest. I mean, some people swear that bananas are good for sleep, but proving it is pretty tricky. Science is a bit slim on that score. I don't know whether anyone's got any theories about food and sleep, but the milky drink is the one that people go on about. I guess that's a kind of slow release kind of. Valerian, yes. So that's what I would quite more a drug than food, really. But Yeah, a lot of these kind of homeopathic, a lot of these natural remedies probably do have a slight hypnotic effect. But yeah, the science hasn't really caught up with it.
I suffer from relatively severe tinnitus, and I find that if I play a bedside radio and then not really listen to it, that helps me off to sleep.
Yeah, that's sort of masking it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
tinnitus, I mean, it's a very big problem and poorly treated, and it goes hand in hand with insomnia, because people who have this tend to be not overwired quite, but they're very sensitive to small stimuli, so their brains are overactive. That's why they're picking up this random noise. So yeah, so insomnia, whether insomnia fuels tinnitus or vice versa, probably both actually. Yeah, but we see a lot of that in the sleep clinic, and we don't really treat it at all well, to be honest.
My question is about nightmares. It always puzzles me why small children who've had, like really good parenting, happy homes and all that, why they have dreams about monsters. Are we somehow programmed to learn fear?
Okay, I should now delve into my theory of why we dream. Not just young people, I mean old people have really horrible dreams. There's a condition out there that many will get very familiar with called REM sleep behaviour disorder. Now in this condition, I mentioned before, in REM sleep and dream sleep we should be completely floppy, and that floppiness kicks in when it shouldn't do. People have narcolepsy. Now there's a condition out there that affects usually middle-aged blokes where this mechanism breaks down and they need to literally act out their dreams. It's not the same as sleepwalking, it's a different thing, but if you're having a big narrative, bizarre dream, rather than being floppy and your eyes just moving, you literally punch out and fight and shout and swear and fall out of bed, kick a goal, Wembley, that sort of thing. And the dreams are not always, but invariably sporting or aggressive. They're very active, often defensive dream. You're defending your loved one, or you're fighting with an aggressor. And these are little meek people who day by day are completely timid and quiet and sort of normal citizens, but they have these really violent and horrible dreams. So this is telling us that dreams actually are probably, we are designed to have very emotionally, usually negative emotionally charged dreams. That's what dreams are about. Whatever dreams are doing, they need to be of that nature. And the same applies to kids. There's no doubt that daytime experiences can influence the dreams, but even if you have a perfectly normal babyhood, childhood, or even adulthood, your dreams will still be prone to be very emotionally charged and unpleasant at times. So fast forward to my theory of why we have dream sleep. Now, very simplistically, we have to explain two things about dreams. One is that as a neonate, as a baby in the first months of life, in fact, first years of life, we spend half our lives in dream sleep. It's incredibly intense having dream sleep as a baby. Now, as we get older, by the time of age about 13, 14, we have maybe an eighth of our sleep in dream sleep. But it's really robust in the first few years of life. So you have to explain that. You have to explain why in what are called functional brain scans, so you put someone in a scanner and you see which bit of the brain is lighting up, which bit of the brain is working, not a structural scan, a functional scan. You can do this, hard to believe, but you can do this in dream sleep. And we know that the limbic lobe, which is the emotional part of the brain, lights up like a beacon in REM sleep. So REM sleep is an emotional phenomenon. So fast forward to my theory, when our brains are developing, we are born with something like 10 times more brain cells than we have when we're 20, which sounds bizarre. You think, surely we're growing, we should be having more brain cells, but no, we lose them. The connections go up, and it's all about the connections. So one major theory or one tenet of brain development is it's use it or lose it. So if you're not using a certain part of the brain, it'll wither on the vine. Okay. So imagine you have a nice kind of stable, normal, middle class, say, babyhood, and you're not exposed to saber-toothed tigers or frightening events in the day. There's a good chance if your emotional brain isn't active, it will wither on the vine. So when you do have an emotional event to deal with, say, age 8, 9, 10, whatever, you won't have the neural machinery to deal with it. So my simple theory of dream sleep is that it's a form of play to keep this part of the brain active and kind of buzzing, but in your dream sleep. So it's kind of, some people have referred it to the ludic theory of sleep, the game, the play theory of dream sleep. So I think this is random neural noise that's keeping like an aerobic exercise for your brain, for your limbic brain, keeping it active and sort of match fit. And that's why dreams are so unpleasant and emotional, and limbic is the word that we use. That's my personal theory. Hard to prove.
Any more questions? Goodness, we seem to have exhausted questions on sleep. Everything you wanted to know about sleep, we were afraid to ask. So, thank you very much, Paul.
Great.